Please, close your eyes for just a moment. Try to remember the faint scent of warm dust radiating from the back of a large wooden television set, or the heavy, satisfying click of a rotary phone dial spinning back into place. Can you feel the rough texture of thick, colorful shag carpeting beneath your bare feet? Welcome back, my old friend. Today we are taking a slow, comforting walk down memory lane. We are going to explore 30 forgotten American things from the 1970s that you will instantly remember. These are the beautiful, everyday details that shaped our youth, objects and routines that have quietly slipped away into the past. And stay with me until the very end, because the last memory we will share involves the quiet, comforting clink of glass on a misty early morning, a beautiful sound of trust and community that we will never hear quite the same way again. Life in the 1970s had a completely different rhythm. Time simply flowed slower, without the frantic, endless rush that we experience today. We did not have screens in our pockets demanding our constant attention, nor did we have the ability to instantly message someone halfway across the world. But let me tell you, that did not make our lives poorer. In fact, our lives were immeasurably richer in genuine human connection. Waiting was a natural, expected part of life, and it made the rewards so much sweeter. We waited for our favorite songs to play on the radio. We waited for our photographs to be developed at the local pharmacy, and we waited for the entire family to gather around the dinner table. We lived in a deeply tactile world, where things were built to last, made of heavy steel, solid wood, and thick glass. Every interaction required physical effort and presence. We are often told that modern technology has connected us all. But looking back at the beautiful simplicity of that era, it is clear that true connection happens not through wires and signals, but through shared patience, quiet moments, and the sincere, uninterrupted attention we gave to one another. Let us take a moment to remember the sheer weight and presence of the family telephone. In the 1970s, the phone was not a tiny sliver of glass in your pocket. It was a substantial, heavy piece of machinery, often proudly sitting in the kitchen or hallway, dressed in popular shades like harvest gold or avocado green. You did not just tap a screen to call someone. You had to physically dial. You would insert your finger into the clear plastic hole, pull the heavy rotary dial all the way clockwise to the metal stop, and let it go. There was an incredibly satisfying, rhythmic clicking sound as the dial spun back to its starting position. You had to do this for every single number, and if you messed up halfway through, you had to press the receiver down and start all over again. But perhaps the most nostalgic part was the long, spiraling, tangled cord. You would stretch that cord to its absolute physical limit just to get a few feet of privacy around the corner, wrapping it around your fingers as you whispered secrets to your best friend. The cord would get twisted into impossible knots over the years, becoming shorter and shorter, a physical testament to hours of beautiful, uninterrupted connection. And what about the ritual of saving up S&H green stamps? This was not just a loyalty program. It was a family project, a shared goal that brought everyone together at the kitchen table. Whenever your mother went to the grocery store or your father filled up the car at the local gas station, they were handed a length of these tiny, perforated olive green stamps with their change. The smell of the adhesive on the back of those stamps is something you never truly forget. On Sunday afternoons, the booklets would come out. You would sit there with a wet sponge, or sometimes just using your tongue, licking stamp after stamp and carefully pressing them into the designated squares of the little saver books. It was a tactile, sticky, methodical process. Once you had filled enough books, the real magic began. You would open the thick, glossy catalog, flipping through pages of shiny new toasters, folding lawn chairs, or even a brand new bicycle. Going to the redemption center felt like stepping into a treasure trove where money was not needed, only the physical evidence of your family's patience and dedication. It taught us the beautiful, delayed gratification of waiting for something truly special. If we are talking about the sounds of the 1970s, we absolutely must mention the unmistakable metallic sound of opening a cold soda on a scorching summer afternoon. Before modern pop-tops, we had the infamous removable pull tabs. You would hook your index finger through the small aluminum ring, pull back with a sharp tug, and hear that glorious, crisp crack, followed by the hiss of escaping carbonation. Then the entire teardrop-shaped piece of metal would come completely off the can. Of course, this meant those sharp little aluminum rings ended up everywhere. They were scattered across the sandy beaches, glinting in the sunshine on the sidewalks, and dropped onto the grass at every neighborhood barbecue. Many of us remember the sudden sharp pain of stepping on one of those discarded tabs while running barefoot through the backyard. Some creative teenagers would link hundreds of these pull tabs together to make incredibly long, shiny chains to hang in their bedrooms. It was a small, everyday interaction with a simple beverage that required a bit of physical effort, leaving behind a tiny, metallic artifact of refreshment that perfectly defined the spirit of the era. Do you remember the delicate, incredibly frustrating art of tuning the television set? In our living rooms, the television was a massive piece of furniture, and getting a clear picture was practically an Olympic sport. We relied on the classic rabbit ear antennas perched precariously on top of the wooden console. When the picture started rolling or dissolving into a blizzard of black and white static, someone, usually the youngest in the family, had to stand up and adjust the metal wands. You would carefully extend them, tilt them at impossible angles, and sometimes you had to employ the ultimate household trick. You would wrap crumpled balls of aluminum foil around the tips of the antennas. The foil crackled under your fingers as you squeezed it tight. Then you would stand there with one hand on the antenna and one foot off the ground, suddenly becoming the perfect human conductor. The picture would magically snap into sharp focus. But the moment you let go and walked back to the couch, the static would return. It was a hilarious and uniquely communal experience of trying to pull a broadcast signal out of thin air just to watch the evening news or your favorite variety show. Let us gently turn our memories to the sweet, distinctive smell of baking batter mixed with warm plastic. For many children growing up in the 1970s, the Easy Bake Oven was the ultimate dream toy. It was not powered by modern heating elements, but by the intense, glowing heat of a single, ordinary 100-watt incandescent light bulb. You would carefully mix the tiny packets of powder with water in a miniature bowl, pouring the thick, sugary batter into a tiny, shallow metal pan. Then, using a special plastic pushing tool, you would slide the pan through a small slot into the glowing chamber. The anticipation was agonizing. You would press your face against the side of the plastic oven, watching the bright yellow light shining from within, waiting for what felt like hours. Finally, you used the tool to push the pan out the other side. The cake was always roughly the size of a hockey puck, surprisingly dense and incredibly sweet. Yet eating that tiny, warm treat felt like a massive culinary triumph. It was a magical machine that turned raw ingredients into a tiny, perfect dessert, all thanks to the simple heat of a household light bulb. We cannot talk about the 1970s without feeling the heavy vibration of the road beneath a massive wood-paneled station wagon. These vehicles were the undisputed kings of the American suburbs, long as a boat and heavy as a tank. But the absolute best place to be during a family road trip was in the very back, sitting in the rear-facing pop-up seats. You would climb over the tailgate, settle into the vinyl seats that would stick to the back of your bare legs on hot summer days, and watch the world rapidly disappearing behind you. You were in your own private bubble, entirely separate from the adults up front. You would make funny faces at the drivers of the cars following behind you, trying to get them to smile or wave. There were no seatbelt laws to restrict your movement, so you would slide around as the car took sharp turns. You could smell the distinct combination of leaded gasoline exhaust and the hot, dusty upholstery of the interior. Riding backwards gave you a completely different perspective on the journey, watching the landscape shrink away into the distance, secure in the rattling, cavernous space of that magnificent family cruiser. Before every moment of our lives was documented on a glowing digital screen, taking a photograph was a deliberate, almost magical event, often accompanied by the blinding burst of a flash cube. If your family had a Kodak Instamatic camera, you will instantly remember the clear plastic cubes that sat firmly on top of the device. Each cube contained 4 tiny, wire-filled bulbs. When you pressed the shutter button in a dimly lit room, there was a loud mechanical snap, followed instantly by a brilliant, explosive burst of blue-white light that left a temporary dark spot in your vision. Then came the soft sizzle of the dying bulb, accompanied by the distinct, slightly metallic smell of burnt filament and melting plastic. After the photo was taken, you had to physically rotate the cube to line up a fresh bulb for the next shot. Because each cube only had 4 flashes, you never wasted them. Every single photograph required thought, preparation, and the loud demand for everyone to freeze and smile. Taking a picture was a genuine occasion, and the rotating, popping flash cube was the fiery little engine that captured our most precious family memories on physical film. As the winter holidays approached, the arrival of the mail carried a heavy, joyful anticipation, culminating in the delivery of the legendary Sears Wish Book. This was not just a catalog. It was a massive, incredibly thick brick of glossy pages that served as a window into every childhood dream. The sheer weight of the book in your lap was deeply comforting. You would lie on your stomach on the living room rug, slowly turning the pages, captivated by the smell of the fresh ink and the crisp paper. The toy section was always at the back, filled with vibrant photographs of electric train sets, die-cast metal cars, baby dolls with blinking eyes, and complicated board games. You would take a ballpoint pen and meticulously circle the items you wanted, carefully folding down the corners of the pages so your parents would know exactly where to look. It was hours of quiet, imaginative browsing. We did not have the internet to instantly show us every toy in existence. The Wish Book was our entire universe of possibility, a tangible, heavy book of dreams that promised magic and genuine excitement under the glowing lights of the holiday tree. There is a very specific, terrifying thrill associated with the neighborhood playgrounds of the 1970s. They were not made of soft plastics or bouncy rubber surfaces. They were constructed of heavy, unforgiving galvanized steel, set firmly over hard-packed dirt or solid concrete. On a sweltering afternoon in July, the giant metal slide became a scorching hot skillet. You would climb the towering ladder, feeling the heat radiate through the soles of your sneakers. As you went down, the hot metal would practically burn the back of your legs, but the rush of speed was entirely worth it. Then there was the merry-go-round, a massive steel disc that required the combined strength of several children to get spinning. Once it gained momentum, you had to hold on for dear life as the centrifugal force tried to throw you off into the dust. You could smell the metallic rust and feel the rough, peeling paint under your gripping hands. These playgrounds were wild, dangerous, and incredibly fun. They taught us balance, bravery, and physical resilience, giving us a thrilling joy that modern, overly safe play areas can never quite replicate. Think back to the intense, almost religious focus required to create the perfect mixtape directly off the FM radio. Long before endless streaming playlists, gathering your favorite songs was a true labor of love and immense patience. You would sit cross-legged on the carpet, your finger hovering anxiously over the red record button and the play button simultaneously on your bulky cassette deck. You would listen to the radio station for hours, wading through commercials and songs you hated, just hoping the disc jockey would play that one specific hit you were desperate to capture. When the first notes finally rang out, you slammed the buttons down. The greatest frustration was when the radio host continued talking right over the intricate intro of the song, ruining your perfect recording. You could hear the faint hiss of the blank cassette tape beneath the music, a warm analog imperfection that made it uniquely yours. Giving someone a homemade cassette tape meant you had literally sacrificed your time and attention to curate a collection of melodies just for them. It was a profoundly personal gift, created through hours of dedicated listening. Let us revisit the commanding presence of the console television set, a piece of technology that was treated exactly like fine furniture. These massive, heavy wooden cabinets dominated the living room, complete with ornate carvings and fabric-covered speaker grills. Turning on the television was not an instantaneous event. You would reach out and grasp the heavy plastic knob, pulling it forward with a loud mechanical click. Then you had to wait. Inside the cabinet, a complex network of glass vacuum tubes had to slowly warm up. First, you would hear a low electrical hum radiating from the back of the set. Then, a tiny glowing white dot would appear in the very center of the curved glass screen. Slowly, almost painfully, that dot would expand into a horizontal line and finally stretch vertically to reveal a fuzzy, brightly colored picture. There was a faint smell of warm dust and heated electronics that accompanied the glow of the screen. We gathered around this glowing wooden box, not as individuals staring at separate screens, but as a united family, waiting patiently in the dim light for the evening entertainment to slowly bloom into existence before our eyes. If there is one scent that instantly transports an entire generation back to a 1970s classroom, it is the sharp, intoxicating aroma of a freshly printed mimeograph worksheet. Before the days of silent laser printers and digital whiteboards, teachers used a heavy, hand-cranked machine to produce copies. When the teacher handed out a stack of tests or reading materials, the papers were often still slightly damp to the touch. The text was printed in a beautiful, faded purple ink that sometimes smudged on your fingers. But it was the smell that truly captivated us. It was a sweet, chemical solvent odor that filled the entire classroom. Without fail, every student in the room would instinctively lift the crisp white paper to their nose and take a deep, satisfying breath before ever reading a single word. It was a collective, silent ritual. The tactile sensation of the slightly damp paper, combined with that unique, industrial yet sweet fragrance, made the mundane task of receiving a spelling test feel like a tiny sensory adventure. It is a scent that vanished completely from the world, existing now only in our collective memories. Consider the heavy mechanical reality of making a phone call when you were far away from home. The public payphone was a genuine lifeline, a bulky, armor-plated box bolted to the brick wall of a gas station or standing proudly inside a glass booth. When you picked up the receiver, it had a satisfying heft, connected by a thick, armored metal cord that felt completely indestructible. You would dig into the lint at the bottom of your pockets, searching for a smooth, heavy quarter or a dime. Dropping the coin into the narrow slot produced a beautiful, distinctive sequence of sounds. You could hear the coin clinking down the internal metal chute, followed by a resonant melodic chime that signaled the machine had accepted your money. The dial tone would hum loudly in your ear as you pressed the heavy, square plastic buttons. Standing in a phone booth, smelling the faint scent of old cigarette smoke and the metallic coldness of the enclosure, you were anchored to that specific spot on the earth. You had to stand still, focus entirely on the voice on the other end, and watch the world go by through the folding glass doors. Let us fondly recall the futuristic promise of the foil-covered television dinner. In an era before the microwave oven became a staple in every single kitchen, eating a frozen meal required genuine patience and a very hot oven. The meals came packaged in divided aluminum trays, each section perfectly proportioned for a slice of Salisbury steak, a mound of mashed potatoes, and a small puddle of mixed vegetables. You would carefully peel back the edges of the stiff aluminum foil to expose the dessert, usually a bubbly apple or cherry cobbler, before sliding the tray into the roaring heat of the oven for 45 minutes. The house would slowly fill with the smell of roasting gravy and baking fruit. When it was finally ready, the aluminum tray was dangerously hot. You would sit on the carpet in the living room, balancing the flimsy, burning metal tray on your lap on a folding TV tray table, eyes glued to a prime-time sitcom. Peeling back that foil was like opening a culinary treasure chest. The food was simple, but the experience of eating dinner directly out of a hot metal tray while watching your favorite show was the absolute height of modern luxury. Do you remember the sheer, unadulterated joy of Saturday mornings? In a world with only 3 major television networks, cartoon shows did not play all day long. They were a precious, limited resource that only existed on Saturday mornings. You would wake up before the sun, creeping quietly through the dark house so you would not wake your sleeping parents. You would pour yourself a massive bowl of brightly colored, incredibly sugary cereal, splashing cold milk over the top. The most crucial part of this ritual was the cereal box itself. You would plunge your hand deep into the dry, crunchy depths, searching desperately for the hidden plastic prize buried at the bottom. Sitting practically a foot away from the glowing television screen, bathed in the colorful light of animated heroes, you would eat your cereal and assemble your cheap plastic toy. The loud crunching in your ears mixed with the zany sound effects from the television. It was a block of time completely dedicated to childhood, a weekly ritual of sugar, imagination, and uninterrupted animated joy that disappeared the exact moment the afternoon sports broadcasts began. Let us bring back the heavy, percussive symphony of a manual typewriter. Writing a letter or school report in the 1970s was a tremendously physical act. The machine was incredibly heavy, built of solid cast iron and thick enamel. Every time you pressed a key, you had to push down with real force. You could feel the mechanical linkage spring to life beneath your fingertips, throwing the metal type bar forward to aggressively strike the ink-soaked ribbon against the rough texture of the paper. It made a loud, sharp clack. The sound of a fast typist was a rapid-fire rhythm of clattering metal, ending always with the bright, cheerful ping of the bell, warning you that the margin was approaching. Then came the satisfying, forceful throw of the carriage return lever, physically pushing the heavy roller back to the left side of the machine with a loud zip. There was no delete key. Every mistake had to be painted over with thick, pungent white correction fluid, which you would blow on frantically to dry. Typing was not just writing, it was construction, building words onto a page with noise, sweat, and beautiful heavy machinery. We must take a moment to feel the bizarre, wonderful texture of wall-to-wall shag carpeting beneath our bare feet. In the 1970s, floors were not meant to be flat or smooth. They were meant to be vibrant, deep, and impossibly fluffy. Houses were covered in acres of carpeting in wild shades of burnt orange, mustard yellow, and deep avocado green. The yarn was so long that small toys, coins, and dropped crumbs could easily disappear completely into its hidden depths. Walking on it was like wading through a soft, synthetic meadow. But maintaining this luxury required a highly specific, forgotten tool known as the carpet rake. Because the heavy foot traffic would crush the long fibers flat, homeowners would actually use a plastic rake with long, widely spaced teeth to aggressively pull the yarn back up to its full, fluffy height. The sound of the plastic rake scraping through the dense nylon fibers was a regular weekend noise in many households. We would lay flat on our backs on that deep, plush surface, staring at the ceiling, feeling the soft yarn tickling our ears, completely comfortable on the vibrant floor of our childhood homes. Imagine the deafening, bone-rattling roar of steel wheels rolling across a concrete sidewalk. Before polyurethane wheels made skating smooth and silent, we wore adjustable metal roller skates that strapped directly onto our everyday sneakers. These heavy, clunky metal contraptions were a true test of balance and endurance. You used a specialized metal skate key, worn securely around your neck on a piece of dirty string, to widen the skate. You stepped your shoe onto the metal footbed, and then used the key to aggressively crank the metal side clamps tightly onto the edges of your rubber soles. They were never perfectly secure, always shifting slightly with every single stride. When you started rolling down the driveway, the noise was absolute thunder. The hard steel wheels caught on every single crack, pebble, and uneven seam in the concrete, sending harsh vibrations straight up your legs and jarring your teeth. But the feeling of wind in your hair, the heavy metallic weight on your feet, and the loud dominant sound announcing your arrival to the entire neighborhood gave you a feeling of absolute freedom and pure, unbridled speed. Do you recall the magic of pressing your eyes against the dual lenses of a plastic Viewmaster? It was usually shaped like a pair of futuristic binoculars, molded in bright primary red. This humble plastic device held the power to transport you to the Grand Canyon, to the surface of the moon, or into the middle of your favorite cartoon. You would carefully pick up a thin, circular white cardboard reel, lined with tiny, transparent color photographs. Slipping it into the slot at the top of the Viewmaster, you would hold the device up to the nearest light bulb or the bright afternoon window. When you pressed the mechanical lever on the right side, it produced a loud, definitive click, rotating the disc exactly one frame forward. Suddenly, the image inside sprang to life in stunning, vivid three-dimensional depth. It felt as though you could reach your hand right through the lenses and touch the miniature worlds frozen inside. It was a silent, deeply solitary experience. You were completely isolated from the room around you, lost in a glowing, stereoscopic paradise that operated entirely on ambient light and your own boundless imagination. And finally, let us remember the quiet, comforting morning ritual of the milk delivery. Long before massive plastic jugs lined the fluorescent aisles of enormous supermarkets, milk was brought directly to your home by a familiar face. In the early misty hours of the morning, before the neighborhood had fully awakened, you could hear the slow rumble of the delivery truck coming down the street. Then came the soft, rhythmic clinking of heavy glass bottles rattling together in a metal wire carrier. The milkman would walk up to your front porch and open the insulated aluminum box that sat by the door. He would retrieve the empty, rinsed glass bottles you had left out the night before and replace them with incredibly cold, heavy glass bottles filled with pristine white milk. The top was often sealed with a simple paper or foil cap. Pouring a glass of milk from that heavy, sweating glass bottle felt incredibly pure. It was a system built entirely on trust, community, and reliable routine. That quiet clink of glass on the porch was a reassuring signal that the world was still turning and that your family was taken care of for another beautiful day. As we come to the end of this journey, we realize a profound truth. We do not just miss these old objects and forgotten routines. What we truly miss is our youth, the unhurried pace of the 1970s, and the deep, tangible connection we had with our families and our communities. We miss a time when life felt a little more grounded, a little more patient, and beautifully simple. Thank you so much for walking down memory lane with me today. If this video brought a smile to your face or warmth to your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Your support means the absolute world to me. Now, I have a question for you. What is the one specific thing you miss the absolute most from your childhood home? Please share your personal stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and I cannot wait to remember with you.